Once I was a karate champion and held that distinction, I ended up 2 years later becoming the Florida Open champion, the Florida Games champion, the Tampa Super Fight champion. I won the Olympic trials for Region 9. And then I was invited to be in a karate movie with many of my idols.
Come on, man. Don't bullshit me. What's going on?
Okay, if you must know, I met a couple husky girls that were into gunplay.
How husky are we talking?
Folks, this may be the best episode of Big Boy Pants Golf yet. A few weeks ago, I posted a clip of myself with Amanda Hebus after she won her UFC Fight of the Night event. And then I was topped by none other than golf OG legend Christo Garcia with a video of himself with Eddie Bravo.
These fuckers don't have shoes on.
They don't have what?
Insane, I know, but it gets better. Once you start diving into Christo Garcia's background, you're going to find that that video is just tip of the iceberg. Christo, great having you on this episode of Big Boy Pants Golf.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me on Big Boy Pants Golf, YouTube's hottest golf channel.
Truth be told, I've wanted to collab with you for the longest time, but I didn't feel worthy, especially after seeing you collab with Eddie Bravo. Now you've sent me your Christo Garcia reel, which to me is top 3 best things I've ever seen on YouTube. The only thing that might top it is when the Dig co-founder threw a raccoon that was attacking his dog off of a balcony. Please walk us through not your swing evolution, but your life evolution.
It's like any half Asian young man in the 70s knows Bruce Lee was a huge, huge influence. So I grew up in a small southern town called Wauchula, Florida. It was only like 3,000 people. And I'm out in the middle of nowhere. My dad's a doctor from the Philippines. And on television, you know, there was a half Asian character named Kwai Chang Caine in the Kung Fu television series. So I'm like, wow, I was always searching for an identity. And then when my older brother started studying martial arts and bringing home Inside Kung Fu magazine and Black Belt magazine, and I saw this guy, Bruce Lee, who was ripped to shreds and looked bad as hell, I'm like, man, that guy's pretty darn cool. I wouldn't mind being like him. And all of a sudden, when I was 8 years old, I started studying karate, and that gave me a little bit of a compass for the next 30 years of my life.
Christo, there's not one Asian male that didn't idolize Bruce Lee. I've got my Enter the Dragon. It's still the best martial arts movie ever. I did remember my first Bruce Lee movie, I think, was Fists of Fury. Mm-hmm. And it taught me that whenever you got in a bad situation, just get really angry.
Yeah, that's what it taught me too. And I fought a lot as a kid. Unfortunately, fortunately, I really, had a lot of anger as a kid, and I channeled it into martial arts. And I think it was actually really helpful for me to develop that discipline. 1977, I started studying USA Goju-Ryu under Sensei Donald Samuels in Wauchula. He's a former Marine. And I had 3 older brothers that were all in this martial arts class. And I remember I was probably about 11, maybe 12 when I fought in my first tournament and won that. And then my family actually moved to another city in between the 8th and 9th grade. And immediately, now I was heavy into martial arts. So every kid in high school is like, hey, well, these are the guys that do karate. You guys fight. And that's when I met my best friend, Eric Kelly. And he's the one that really encouraged me to, he's the guy that got me into karate tournaments, pushed me. He was my training partner. He's been a tremendous influence my whole life. But he was, I've always been kind of a reluctant kind of guy. And he's like, no, you have to do this. And And then the next thing you know, I was the #1 rated junior fighter in the state of Florida. Actually, I'll tell you a great story. So I was the #2 ranked fighter in the state of Florida. And then we had the Gasparilla Karate Championships. And it was the biggest martial arts tournament of the year. And it was at the Fort Hesterly Armory in Tampa, Florida. And there were, I don't even know, maybe 36 people in the black and brown belt division on the Fame circuit in the 1980s. This is like peak Karate Kid days. So it's 1987, and he and I were in the same school, so we started on opposite sides of the bracket. And there's the USA Junior Karate Team. There's the Superstars Karate Team. There was the Rising Sun Karate Team. And these guys were big schools, a lot of them schools, franchise schools. And they had their teams of, badass Karate Kid fighters. And my group was called the Asian American Fighting Youth. And we trained out of my garage, and I was the coach. And so Eric and I fought through and beat every single person and wound up in the finals together. And we were kind of fooling around and and the time ran out, and the guy says, "Look, I know you guys don't want to fight each other, but there's 1 point, overtime, next point wins." And we get set, and I'm like, "Listen, okay, let's do this." And we get set, and my friend throws a feint and then puts his fist down by his pants, and I, just reactively just smoked him, and he let me win in a strange sort of way, as kind of his coach or whatever. And then I became the #1 rated fighter in the state of Florida as a junior. And then that greatly affected me for the rest of my life. Once I was a karate champion and held that distinction, I ended up 2 years later becoming the Florida Open champion, the Florida Games champion, the Tampa Super Fight champion. I won the Olympic trials for Region 9. And then I was invited to be in a karate movie with many of my idols. Keith Vitale was the star of No Retreat, No Surrender Part 3. People probably know that name because Jean-Claude Van Damme was in the first one. And so I had a small part in that film at 20 years old. And when that happened, I realized I really could be Bruce Lee.
Self-defense instructor and 4-degree black belt, Mike Tanaki, tailored the training to anticipate real-life street situations.
Good, good. You might want to vocalize a little bit. It helps you to gather your strength and power. And one. Who's next?
That's clips from a film called Lolly Love I did with James Gunn, who was the director of Guardians of the Galaxy.
And there's a couple celebrities in there, people that everyone knows now. Pam from The Office. I need you to explain what it was like working with her. And also, for those who are familiar with a lot of actresses, Judy Greer, who's been in everything. Tell me what it's like working with Pam from The Office, aka Jenna Fischer.
Well, Jenna and James were married, so I've known them both for many years. And James Gunn was the best friend of my roommate, Stephen Blackheart. Back in the 90s, Tromeo and Juliet era, Lolly Love was a trauma film that I was in with those guys. And that's what Judy and Jenna Fischer were a part of. Jenna's the sweetest thing in the world. She's just a normal person. And it was so funny because we made Lolly Love, and it was like maybe 2 or 3 years later, I ran into her after The Office blew up. And it's so funny to me because I've always wondered, because Lolly Love was a mockumentary, kind of a fake comedic documentary. And when you look at The Office, I wonder if those NBC execs may have kind of like seen Lolly Love and really appreciated what she delivered there, the very dry kind of, humor. And, she's super duper talented, obviously. And she, became a big, big star. And I'm so happy for her, And Judy was like the famous one. back when we made that film, because you just saw her all the time, like What Women Want and everything else with Mel Gibson. But she's just been a workhorse. I mean, she's, probably been in a couple hundred things, movies and TV shows. But Judy's cool, man. She's just a cool cat.
What's interesting is they're going to do another installment of The Karate Kid with Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio. I'm hoping that those Holly directors see this and realize there's got to be a role for Christo Garcia.
Wouldn't that be cool?
There's two things that I try and think about when I'm turning. The first thing that I want to do is have a straight line from my toes through the top of my head. We want to grow as tall as we can.
How could I wind up as a professional ballet dancer? And the answer is, I wanted to be the greatest martial arts action actor in the world. And I literally believed I prepared myself to be that. I knew that, as far as like kicking, jumping, spinning, I had that. Then I thought it was really important that I studied stage combat, which I became a fight choreographer and a master fight instructor for stage. I did sword fighting. I did hand-to-hand combat. I staged fight scenes for ballet companies, American theater, all these big companies. And then, when the UFC came out, I was at the forefront of incorporating jujitsu and MMA into movie choreography. In fact, the writer he did Fast and Furious 2, and we were at a dinner party, and I was telling him, I was like, man, he's asking me about fight choreography. I'm like, oh, man, I think that this sucks, and this, this is bullshit. And, I'm like, what I would be doing is I would be mixing in more UFC, because it's going to go there. It has to go there, because it's what we know about real fighting. And then the next thing, Paul Walker in the second one is like arm barring this guy and doing all this jujitsu and everything. It's kind of funny. But, then the ballet was, again, I wanted to have such supreme body control when I got to Hollywood that it would be undeniable that I'm the #1 action star in the world. Wire work. I mean, I had it all, man. And so in the year 2000, I was slated to star in a NBC TV series called Hidden City.
I thought for some reason there'd be a little bargaining room.
Bargaining room?
Yeah.
That was to take place in San Francisco. I got repped by one of the biggest managers in Hollywood, and I was invited into the president of NBC's office with the executive producer, Lauren Shuler Donner, who made all the X-Men movies, and her husband, Richard Donner, did all the Superman movies. And so Ted Harbert asked me, at the end of the meeting, he said, how would you like to work for NBC? And I said, I think it'd be a dream come true. And so we spent several months developing the series about a half Asian, half American detective in San Francisco who's hunting down the killer of his mother.
I thought that number was just an estimate, a number that you were sort of hoping for. Because I've got a number in the back of my head that I was sort of hoping for, too.
And so it turns out that it came down to Hidden City or She Spies. She Spies was the Charlie's Angels ripoff that Natasha Henstridge starred in, and they went with She Spies. Charlie's Angels was pretty hot back then, and everybody told me, is like, Christo, they know who you are. You are. It's just a matter of time before they make the phone call and you're in that big karate movie or in that big karate television series. And I just started working behind the camera. And 1 year ticked off, 2 years ticks off, 3 years ticks off. And then I do a little part here, I do a little part there. And it just never came to pass. And as crazy as that is, I gave it my best. And I felt like, I really thought that I was the best martial arts action actor in the world, the best prepared, which was like, we want to control the things we can control, right?
Natasha Henstridge, Canadian model, famous movie, Species.
She's pretty hot.
Now, when you were playing the half Asian detective, there's a clip of you very coolly smoking a cigarette. Did you train for that?
I'll tell you, man, back in the 90s, I could smoke a heater. Grew up on the East Coast. I was bartending a lot in between theater gigs and stuff like that, but it was just a short phase, but I know how to do it.
Another talent. We still need to dive more into you're the karate champion. You're probably now representing half Asians really well on the ladies scene because you're a champ. And now you're saying, hey, I need more. I need to be a ballet master. Tell us about that transition.
After I was in the film No Retreat, No Surrender, I decided that I was going to drop my biology scholarship and change my major to theater, because I was like, okay, this is actually a real thing. You've been in a movie. It feels like the right place for you. So you need to learn more about the actual craft of acting.
Christo, that's every Asian parent's worst nightmare, having your child go from a biology degree to switching their major to theater.
Yeah, my dad was a doctor and my mom was a nurse. So you can imagine it was a little bit like, what are you thinking? But nonetheless, I made the jump and they knew that I was serious about it. And when just a couple months before my 21st birthday, if you study theater performance, you also have to take electives in singing and dancing, voice and dance. And so I walked into ballet fundamentals class. And my teacher was one of the most famous teachers in the world. I didn't know this. I walk right in, and she's the author of classical ballet technique, Gretchen Ward Warren, who was the ballet mistress for the American Ballet Theater in New York City, and a soloist with the Pennsylvania Ballet. And so I walked in and, of course, I'm in pretty good shape as a karate champion at the time. I'm very flexible. And she has me stand at the bar and she's looking at me and she goes, "Can you turn your feet out?" And I'm like, what do you mean, like this? And I had what's called perfect turnout, 180-degree rotation in my hips. And she said, "You could be a professional dancer. Do you realize that?" And I laughed. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is like my first day of fundamentals of ballet. And so she said that she wanted to give me a private ballet lesson. It was kind of like an assessment or something. And she gave me 2 videotapes of Baryshnikov and Fernando Bajones, soloists, the principal dancers for the American Ballet Theater. And so I watched these videos. I went home. I started watching these videos. And I'm like, I used to enjoy forms competition. As I love sparring, but I love to watch like John Chung and the greatest, they were amazing forms competitors. These guys who could kick straight up in the air. And I always thought it was really, really cool, but it's closer to like choreography when you see a forms competition, Then I'm seeing Baryshnikov use the air in ways that regular people can't even use the ground. I mean, he defied gravity. And so I watched them like, I need to figure out how to do this. And so within 2 years, I was a professional ballet dancer in a company.
That's insane. You were 21 when you started, and in 2 years, professional ballet dancer. That's probably unheard of.
Yeah, in 1 year I could do 5 pirouettes, and my teachers were like, "This is crazy." So I had a fork in the road where I was offered when I graduated, I was offered a full scholarship to study at the Royal Winnipeg Ballet. And then I was also offered a full scholarship to perform in the Broadway Theater Project with Anne Reinking. And I worked personally with Anne in a show. She's a Tony Award-winning superstar of Broadway. And she convinced me to go to the Broadway Theater Project. And Gretchen was a little upset that I didn't go to the Royal Winnipeg Ballet. But had I gone to Winnipeg, I think I would have been a principal ballet dancer in a major company. And I probably would have done that. But it meant that I would have had to say goodbye to my martial arts dreams. So I kind of, in a way, turned down ballet
My name is Christo Garcia, and I'm a martial arts action actor.
because I still had a burning desire to be a martial arts star.
A martial arts star on film in Hollywood, correct?
Yes.
And I don't know if you noticed this or how you have these in all your movies. Every movie has you starring opposite a very attractive woman and very passionately making out with at least one of them.
It's not the worst business in the world, but yeah, I've enjoyed, my co-stars. They're attractive, wonderful, exciting women.
One clip in particular, I mean, it could also work as a zombie movie clip because it's almost like you're eating her face.
Yeah, but that was the character. That was the scene. That was the the tension that had built up. So that was, yeah.
That's the theater experience. You embody that character. And at that moment,
Well, it becomes real. It's like when you're really performing. Now, I write and direct a great deal of the work that you've seen, and so, and a lot of my co-stars are actresses that I'm friends with, that I cast on purpose because I'm like, I've got this part and I think that it's just right for you. But we're really always strive, like one of the hallmarks of my work, I think, is it has an almost documentary feel, that it's very real. Like I try to, like everything you see me do, I'm doing, generally speaking. I have had stunt doubles, for really dangerous things, but for the most part, you're seeing me live it and do it.
you're essentially like Jackie Chan meets Ong Bak meets Baryshnikov in these movies. I want to talk about 2013's Portrait of a Soldier. This is what you said, kind of a documentary type aspect to it. You are this soldier with PTSD.
After Abu Ghraib, I went to alert command about the tactics as they ordered me to use, and they threatened me with a court-martial. Before I even made it back to the barracks, I was gone, dishonorable discharge. Now I don't have shit.
Okay.
I wrote this because I had always heard that when I was growing up, that a third of the people that you saw that were homeless were Vietnam veterans. And in the 80s, we saw a lot of PTSD with Rambo and movies like that explored that. And then after years of the Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts, I began researching PTSD with this group of soldiers. And so that inspired me to write Portrait of a Soldier.
What you're doing back in 2013 is better than the movies they're putting out now. That's a guarantee. Also, any movie you put out back then, guaranteed they'd make a woman play the soldier now. For some reason, all the movies have to have the gender reversed. But that brings us to 2010's Morristown, a ballerina love story.
It's actually what I would call a drama-mentary. And what I mean by that, did you see that I won Best Director at an international film festival for that movie?
Yes.
So they asked me, the jury, I was nominated for Best Director. And so I fly to the film festival and they said, was that a documentary or was it scripted? And I said, it was both. What I did is I scripted a story and set it in a real world where we're actually putting on a recital, where there's actually in this town, Morristown, the ballet school that my friend from back in my performing days, it was his ballet school. We're literally going to put on a show. And like when you see me teaching, I'm teaching ballet. My students are really doing the class, but I directed it in a way where we would weave in, my co-star Dawn, she flew out from Los Angeles. She wasn't a student in the school. My co-star Crystal, she and I trained at the Nutmeg Ballet in Torrington, Connecticut. So I flew her into town, so she played one of the other ballet teachers. And when you're watching it, it feels like a real, and it was real. It just had a narrative structured throughout the weeks of rehearsals leading up to the final ballet performance. So that's something that, I think was a first. It's pretty rare that you've seen movies like that.
The dialogue is on point when you're basically trying to warn your co-star about the realities of being a 30-year-old ballerina, banged up body, but then also recognizing that you still can't talk someone out of their dreams.
That's the central theme of the movie, is that you have to be allowed to pursue what your heart desires. Joseph Campbell is the author of The Hero with a Thousand Faces that George Lucas used to create his storylines. And so what Joseph Campbell says is the hero faces a call to adventure. And every hero story begins like this. It's like you get the call to adventure, and the hero is at a fork in the road. Either he's going to heed the call to adventure, or he can resist the call to adventure. If he resists the call to adventure, he's going to be led down a road towards boredom and, life as it just always is, and inevitably fate will then draw him towards the adventure. That's the reluctant hero. That's me. Like, I don't know if I want to compete in karate tournaments. And my best friend, Eric, is like, dude, you are the best sparring person I've ever seen. You have got to get in these tournaments, and it's like, okay. It's like, I don't know if I want to start a YouTube channel. Oh, you get pulled into a YouTube channel or whatever it is. But that's the choice that people have in their daily life is, am I going to go on the adventure, or am I just going to sit on the couch? And if there's any one thing that I would say is I've always tried to say yes to the adventure.
One adventure you said yes to was starring in a TV show with Eddie Bravo and Joey Diaz.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? So I obviously studied jujitsu. And once again, my training partner, Eric, said, hey, man, you got to check out this rubber guard stuff that Eddie Bravo's doing. And he's in Los Angeles. You got to look him up. And so, I don't know, like 15 years ago or whatever, I looked him up on YouTube, and I'm like, wow, this is innovative. This is different. It's still Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. He calls himself a Gracie guy. He's a black belt under Jean-Jacques, 4th degree black belt now. And so I started hanging out with Eddie, and we just immediately became like best friends. It's like blah, 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 and then before long, I was like, dude, we should make something. So, we talked out a story idea. Eddie started out with like, okay, so there's this, guy getting tortured. I don't know if you saw it, but the opening scene with Hanato Laranja. And so Eddie started off the conversation with that scene. And then I basically structured the show out of that. And then the next thing you know, we were filming it. And that's one of my favorite projects I've ever worked on. And it is absolutely loved by the martial arts community and the people who've seen it.
Christo, I know you have some insane hand speed when you're in full mount on that one dude and just raining down blows. I mean, this guy didn't have a chance to live.
So that's a film that I made called Hangman. I had a full script, but I was working on kind of a trailer for it. And I'm throwing down punches on my friend Joe Pop, who's kind of was a music star back in the day. He had his own band and was well known, and he was like this hardcore rocker, but totally game, to be with me in that little film. And man, we shot some really amazing visuals in that project. And this was back in the day when we used real film, not video. And that's why I do say I'm a filmmaker.
You also have a photo with John Danaher.
Yeah.
Did you meet him? What was that experience? Because he's now, he always pops up on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he just lays this just general life wisdom, if anything.
He's one of the greatest gentlemen I've ever met. I've interviewed John. I've interviewed Gordon. John is the one that I heard him say this, and I've adopted it. He said, your life can be changed in an instant. He goes, mine was changed in an instant. And he tells a story about Matt Serra and, this realization he has about jujitsu. And so my life was changed in an instant with that OTT move. I say that to people all the time, So, Gordon Ryan, when I met Gordon Ryan, he was only 170 pounds and he wiped the floor with everyone at the EBI 7, maybe. And it was incredible. It's so funny because, every year I'd see Gordon, I'd be like, "Hey man, what are you weighing in at?" He's like, "I'm 219 now," and yada yada yada. And it's really kind of wild to me. Like I'm thinking about whipping out that old interview that I did backstage before Gordon won that first EBI. And it's like, how do I know these people, man? It's like it's almost like I have alter egos. Like I'll walk into, for the longest time people didn't know this. Like I remember I was with somebody at like someplace like Best Buy, and it was with a golf friend. And this guy's like, "Hey man, you Christo Garcia?" And oh no, it was in a golf store. We were in like Golf Galaxy. And this guy's like, "Hey man, are you Christo Garcia?" I'm like, yeah, I am. I was like, "Do you watch my golf YouTube channel?" He's like, "No, man, I know you from Eddie Bravo's stuff." And it's like, what in the world? I never know what people are going to recognize me for.
So this guy actually recognized you from Eddie Bravo's stuff, and I know you as the Ben Hogan guy. Can you tell us about your transition from mixed martial arts action star, ballet dancer, and everything under the sun to one day waking up and putting out this Finding Ben Hogan Miracle Swing Experience video 12 years ago?
I played golf all the way through high school. Now, I was never a really good golfer, even though I practiced on the team. I'm not going to be a professional golfer, but I could be a professional martial artist. So I naturally trended in that direction. And we watched all 4 rounds. Like I watched him shoot 40 on the front 9, and I'm like, man, Tiger's not looking so good. Then he shot 30 on the back, and he didn't look back from that second 9 on. And I'm like, man, that's the most incredible thing I've seen since Michael Jordan. I thought with Michael Jordan in the nadir of his career that I wasn't going to have a hero. But all of a sudden, Tiger Woods became my new hero. And so I realized, I did love the game. So I allowed myself to start playing with my roommate. And I'm going to tell you something. I went out with another friend of ours that we worked with, and I shot 126. But that just goes to show you how technical golf can be. I was never very good at it. And the lowest I could shoot was 83. And that's my best day. But most days were 90s. And that's where I lived. And I even started to practice and take lessons, and none of it worked. And then I was buying my 7th driver in 3 years. And next to the cash register was Ben Hogan's 5 lessons. So I'm 40 years old, total average hack golfer. And in this book, he says, if you follow these fundamentals, you should be able to shoot in the 70s. And I'm like, sign me up. Okay. It's worth the $12. Buy it. And I start looking through it, and I like the pictures, and it's pretty cool. And I just start working on the lessons. This is still a year before my YouTube channel was launched. Christmas revelry. Oh yeah. I did a little bit too much tipping back, and I ended up falling asleep on the couch, and I slept on my left arm like this. And I wake up, 7 hours later. Oh, it's time to go play golf. This arm didn't work. I couldn't lift this arm or move this arm at all. And so I'm like, I'm still going. And so I go to the driving range, and I just put a couple fingers from my left hand on the top of the grip. And it was just all right side, just swinging all with my right side. And then I get home and I look at the videotape, and for the first time, I'm like getting through the shot fully. I'm rotating through the shot. And I looked like Ben Hogan for the first time. And I'm like, oh my God. So the next day I get my Hogan hat, I put on a cardigan, I go to the driving range, and I'm doing this right-sided swing, getting through the shot. And that was my first YouTube video that I published in January 2011 for my swing evolution, called Finding Ben Hogan.
How long did it take you to make your first Ben Hogan video?
Are you talking about that very first one called Finding Ben Hogan?
Yes.
Well, I filmed it on the 27th of December, 2010. I published it in January. It probably took me, only a few days to edit the video, but I think I published it about 2 or 3 weeks later when I just had a moment of inspiration. I didn't know what to call my channel. And then I was like, My Swing Evolution. And I was like, okay, I got the name. Let's start this thing up. And golf is so darn hard. I've always tried to maintain a lot of humility and be very humble in regards to the game. That's why I don't talk about martial arts and stuff very much on my channel. It's like it's about the golf primarily. Let's keep it about the golf. And so at the end of the first year, I had 100,000 views and I had 300 subscribers. And I was like, wow, I can't believe that people are actually watching me, work on my golf game. And this was, I thought I was way behind because there were so many people that already had golf channels at the time, but you get the call to adventure and either you say yes or you say no. I said yes to it. And, here we are now 12 years later, and I've got, 61,000 subscribers and 28 million views, and I think that we're just getting started.
I think people, after seeing this video, are going to have a whole new appreciation of what it is to be Christo Garcia. Red Bull takes Christo Garcia when it wants to get energized, folks.
That's classic. So I am high energy. I've always been quick. I try and slow myself down on the golf course. I wonder, I've mentioned to you that, I think a lot of really good golfers, they have very even keel kind of emotions where I feel it, I get mad when I make a bogey or a double bogey. It makes me crazy, and so the mental game and the management is a real key part of my evolution right now, is becoming a better manager of not the technical aspects. My technical aspects, they're very high level, and I have PGA Tour winners say to me all the time, they're like, why aren't you like lighting it up? I'm like, well, there's still a lot of work to do on my short game and my management skills. And that's just the reality of it. But if you were able to show me a picture of my swing and how I can hit the ball today to me 12 years ago, I'd pay $1 million for that. I mean, I never would have believed I could drive the ball like a pro. I can smoke it. I'm probably 80 yards longer than I was.
What's amazing is you've gone from picking up Ben Hogan's book to writing the book on Hogan called The Hogan Code.
I was hired as Ben Hogan's swing double for the Golf Channel. So I want to tell you, if I may, a little bit about visualization. So my first visualization was I wanted to be able to break 80. My next visualization was I wanted to be able to break par. The next visualization was I wanted to represent the Ben Hogan Golf Company. Well, guess what? There wasn't a Ben Hogan Golf Company because it had been out of business for about 8 years. Ben Hogan Company comes back. I get a phone call and the CEO says, how would you like to join the Ben Hogan family? And I'm like, wow, now I'm, representing Ben Hogan golf clubs. And then the next fantasy I had is like, man, it'd be really cool if I could play Ben Hogan in a movie, but I'm like, well, you're half Filipino. Let's slow down a little bit. It's like not likely you're ever going to play Ben Hogan in a movie. I get the call from the Golf Channel. We'd like for you to swing as Ben Hogan in our, documentary series, Mr. Hogan. It's going to be multiple nights. Like we did one with Jack and did one with Arnold. The third one's going to be Ben Hogan. And I'm like, well, I guess they could have chosen anybody in the world and they chose me. So, that happened. And then, next thing you know, I'm at Jack Nicklaus's house interviewing him. I'm interviewing Gary Player, and then I'll tell you, what's happened in the last couple of years with this over the top, epiphany is like, I think, and I say this with as much humility as possible because it's a pretty big dream. I think that I'm going to have my fingerprints on the history of swing technique forever, because I think I've actually put puzzle pieces of the original champions golf swing together with a modern twist and look at it that nobody's ever done before. And I think that it's the easiest and most effective way to hit a golf ball.
Christo, your method is the method that I've been taught, that I do probably naturally, that I've been taught is wrong. People literally say to me, snickering in the background, oh, he comes over the top on all his swings. I hear these things because I know that my friends are playing like mind games with me, but it hurts me when I go home. But you know what? Because of this OTT swing, I don't feel bad anymore. I know that OTT is the way to go. Who's down with OTT? Yeah, you know me.
Exactly. Well, you know who else was down with it? Bobby Jones, Sam Snead, Arnold Palmer, the top 10 winners in the history of the PGA Tour. I traced all of their swings. I can go through them one by one if you want, but it's crazy. I have it in videos. It's what we're taught, that we're supposed to lose the arm wrestling match today. They were all winning the arm wrestling match. It's that simple. Every major athletic move, if I'm throwing a right cross, throwing a baseball, serving a tennis ball, if I'm swimming, I'm going like this. It's the strongest and most leveraged position that my shoulder can get in. All these guys teaching this business, I think they've got it wrong. And all the Pied Pipers in golf have led everybody astray down this other road for the last several decades. And now everybody sees any motion like this and they're like, oh, he's going over the top. And it's like, you guys are crazy. You don't understand. This is the simplest and most effective way to hit a golf ball.
Christo, you could go down as the next Harry Vardon, after whom we came up with the Vardon grip. Before then, everyone was holding the golf club willy-nilly, and then Harry Vardon was like, hey, here's my little Vardon grip, and then that became the norm. The OTT may become the norm, but before we go into the OTT anymore, you kind of glossed over the fact that you interviewed Jack Nicklaus, Gary Player, Chichi Rodriguez. Take us through what it's like to meet these legends. Jack Nicklaus was the first guy I would watch on VHS tape, and obviously Golf My Way, the book. Just watching over and over again, him just saying, if you move your head, it's like you can throw all the other fundamentals out the window.
Well, Nicklaus is the GOAT. Okay. And I'll tell you why I think that he's the GOAT. Now, greatest of all time, maybe in pure golf talent, Tiger may be the man. But let's think about something with Nicklaus. First of all, 18 majors, 74 PGA Tour wins. That's pretty incredible. But then when you add in the second place finishes in majors and third place finishes, it's absurd the level that he always performed at on the hardest stage. But this is why I call him the GOAT. All that stuff is great. Jack never missed one of his kids' little league football or baseball games. So he's the GOAT by being the best and not losing his priorities. His wife, Barbara, an absolute, the very perfection of, a partnership with a female. She's the most graceful and poised person you ever met. Gracious, invited me into the house, like just amazing. And when I sit with Jack and I talk to him about the golf swing and how it's changed, like he agrees with me. He's like, I don't think the swing is as good as it used to be. I take the legs out of the swing. We were taught that, it started with a flowing motion from the ground up. That's how Hogan swung. So I'm listening to Nicklaus tell me this, and the thing that's so incredible is Jack is different than anybody else I've ever met, because Jack is the GOAT and he knows it. Like there's not any question. It's just matter of fact. And not in like a rude or braggadocious way. It's just like, well, I won a lot of them, but I lost a lot more than I won, but he's like, I want to beat somebody at their best. I don't want to beat them if they're choking or whatever. I want them to be performing at their very best. So that makes me rise to the occasion so I can see how good I can be. And the way he talks is like, it's like Gordon Ryan. Gordon Ryan knows he's the best jiu-jitsu player in history. He knows it. Whereas now I'll tell you, Gary Player has confidence, extreme confidence. 9 majors, 9 senior majors, 165 wins worldwide. And Gary Player's telling me, the night before I won the Grand Slam, I had to win the US Open, and I'm in a church, a Catholic church at midnight. And I'm saying, you will keep your head down. You will remain patient. You will. And he's like going crazy and everything. He's talking about, I just see the fire come out of him. And it's this intensity, this competitive, confidence and everything. He's like, a lot of people think that they're going to beat me. We play in a practice round and they're like, oh, I'm going to beat Gary Player. But come Thursday, you will not beat me. And it's like, it's a tremendous, powerful presence that he has. But Jack is totally different. Jack's like, yeah, I'm going to win. It's going to take something to keep me from winning. Like, it's just like something would have to go wrong for me not to win. Not a lot of things have to go right. Whereas Gary Player's like, I got to do this right. And I'm going to go do this right. It's a different kind of mindset. And I think we saw it with Tiger. He's similar to Jack, where he's like, had my C game today, but I was able to eke out a win. That's how these ultimate performers look at things.
Talk us through what it's like setting up these interviews with Jack Nicklaus, Gary Player, and Chichi Rodriguez, and your emotions knowing that you're going to knock on a door and eventually meet them.
Well, I'll tell you, I was set up in the pool house, getting ready for the interview, and I've got my camera crew and everything, and I'm looking out the curtains, and Jack has a chipping and putting area in his backyard. It's just what you have. And he's out there with Cheech, and he's out there with his grandson GT, and my brother was with me. He produces a lot of work with me. My brother Bobby, and my other brother Michael's the vice president of Lucasfilm. So our whole family works in the business in a lot of different capacities. But I was with my brother Bobby, and I'm like, can you believe we're looking at Jack Nicklaus teach his grandson in his backyard, a putting lesson, and then Jack comes in and he's like, hey, how are you? And he's like, it's a pleasure, Christo, and so we just roll into it. And it's kind of surreal. Like really it sunk in when we were at lunch. We went to some, local restaurant in Jupiter. And there's we're eating lunch under a poster of Jack at the 86 Masters. And I'm like, we went to his house. I just interviewed the man. And it's just one of these things where I almost feel as if, I guess my destiny wasn't to be the biggest martial arts star in the world. My destiny may have been to help people play better golf. And with this latest epiphany, I really think that my fingerprints are going to be forever etched in the game, because I've figured something out technically that I don't think people who are in the game of golf can see. And I think it's because I come with an outsider's perspective from martial arts and yoga and ballet, that I'm like, you guys, I don't know how you don't see this, but I see it a little bit differently. For example, so most people see the golf swing like it's an inclined plane, like a tilted merry-go-round, right? I see the golf swing that it's a circle this way on the backswing, and the downswing is a circle this way. It's like two separate circles that meet where the ball is. And, I could get into this more, but like, I just see it that way. It's completely different. It's like, we circle back this way, OTT, circle back this way. It's really simple. I think biomechanically our body can't work on the tilted merry-go-round because we have two hips we have to work around. There has to be a shift. And it's like, okay, well, you guys can keep teaching club outside the hands and dropping it under and doing all this stuff because it's like, you know, getting people to hurt their backs and what have you. But it's biomechanically, if I was going to throw a ball into the ground, I don't think I'd take the ball, raise it up like this. I'd take it back like this and throw it right down in the ground with leverage.
So, Christo, when exactly did you wake up and say, my swing evolution, Ben Hogan, not so much. I'm going over into the miracle swing experience. When was this moment of epiphany? And then how did you proceed after that?
Okay, so this is pretty funny because, at this point I'm a golfer. I've shot under par several times. I play with some of the best players in the area, but I still had this inconsistency that would plague me. And in January of 2022, my friend, I'm proud to say I'm friends with Jim McClain. He put out a tweet and we met on Twitter, X. And so Jim said, my old roommate, Bruce Litsky at the University of Houston, is what I call an over-the-top flusher. And I'm like, flusher, man, that's a cool phrase to call somebody who can pound a golf ball. And I was out at the golf course and I'd actually been working on a lot of this shallowing stuff because I got sucked into the rabbit hole with all these, instructors, practically everybody in the world of golf talking about shallowing, getting it under and all this other stuff. And so I said, you know what? I'm just going to go over the top. I was thinking about Litsky. I was thinking about Bobby Jones and Sam Snead. And I'm like, I know that they did it too. So, and I literally was afraid of it for my whole golfing life, that over the top's a death move. And never once consciously, like I avoided it like it was the freaking plague. And I had my pitching wedge and I was, warmed up at this point. I'm like, okay, so if I'm going to go over the top, I guess I have to take it a little bit more to the inside. Took it back to the inside and bam, smoked the first shot. And I ran to the camera. I'm like, that was as solid as any shot I've ever hit in my life. And I have not for a moment thought about doing anything else. My life was changed in an instant, just like John Danaher said, and then the research came. And so I'm like, wait a second, I see Adam Scott and all these guys, they keep it on a perfect plane. And it's very attractive. If your body, like Adam Scott, people don't realize he's super flexible. And a lot of these tour guys have a lot of mobility in their spine. Remarkably, my legs are flexible, but my spine does not have a lot of mobility. So I can't get into that side bend position without hurting myself, But as I started to trace these legends of the game, I started to notice that they all had the OTT move. And the OTT move comes from the inside takeaway that allows you to coil more efficiently on your backswing. And then I see a lot of the modern guys, they don't have it. They're just, trying to maintain that perfect plane look. So as the information starts to come to me, I start making videos, and then I decide to make an instructional video. And when I made that first, just a couple cameras, one of them's my iPhone, a buddy of mine, a pro golfer, talking to me about the OTT swing, immediately became my best-selling instructional video. I immediately got, I would say, 4 to 5 times more personal letters, my YouTube channel, more people commenting. Everybody who's trying it is like, oh my God, I was told never to do this. And they're hitting solid shots. I have got hundreds of personal letters that I've saved of people just telling me, oh my God, this changed my life. This changed my life. And I talked to my friend Gabriel Ryder, who's one of the original YouTube golf stars. He was already a golf star when I started my channel. And, he had created Movement Towards Improvement, PGA Tour Driven. He created George Gankis's first YouTube channel. He created Kelvin Miyahira's first membership site. He works with Adam Porzak and Porzak Golf, built up their golf online business. And Gabe told me, he goes, Christo, I think that you're sitting on the #1 golf instructional program in the world. He's like, it's obvious to me that this works. It's easier. It's steeped in history and tradition, and it's so controversial. It's like, that's everything I would want to create a best-selling instructional video series. He's like, this is everything. And then he asked me a blunt question. He goes, if I go to my swing evolution, can I buy my swing evolution? And I said, no. What do what are you talking about? He's like, well, I can buy the Hogan code or I can buy the Miracle Swing. He said, your brand needs to be based around the miracle. It's like, that's what you're selling. That's what's going to take you to the promised land. So I recommend you rebrand to the Miracle Swing. And my swing evolution is what got you to the miracle, but all of your search engine optimization, everything needs to be driving back over the top, needs to drive you to the answer, which is the Miracle Swing. And that took me 10 months, 8 months or something before I finally was like, I spent 11 years making my swing evolution, but okay, we'll make the jump to the Miracle Swing, and his father came on board, the CEO of Celebrity Lifestyle Brands. And he goes, Christo, you are sitting on, he goes, this is history. We're going to make history with this brand, and so that's what we're doing moving forward, is trying to, spread the good news.
Christo, the fact that you're somewhat of an outsider to the golf swing and all the traditional golf swing theories, to me, you're the kind of guy that can shift the paradigm because of the ballet experience, the martial arts experience. You can see things that other people can't see. For the folks at home, Christo, by over the top, you're referring to the hand path, where the hands go more inside, and on the downswing, it's outside of the original hand path, correct?
Yeah, so what I'm referring to specifically is the backswing plane. On the downswing, the hands go over the backswing plane. Now, if I take the club back like it's taught today, down the line like this, if I go over the top from here, I'm probably going to be in Hack City, Slice Town. Okay, so in order to do the move correctly, you have to take the club back to the inside and then put it onto the plane. If I take it back on the plane and go over the top, then I'm going to be over the plane. So a lot of people confuse what I'm talking about with an outside to in swing path, because most over the top people, it winds up being out to in, but I say inside and up and then over and on. So that's the distinction.
So essentially you're getting the club deeper on the way back so that you have a little bit more wiggle room from the inside, but by going deeper, you get the better coil. It's easier on the body.
It absolutely 100%. It's effortless. It's like people watch me hit golf balls and they're like, it doesn't even look like you're swinging hard. And it's like, well, the appearance of swinging hard comes from trying to move the hands and arms quickly. Really, this is the golf swing right here. This is the major engine. It comes flying out the arms and the hands, and it's very seductive to think you're going to create more speed and power by engaging the arms and hands, and it's visible when a person is doing that. But when you look at an efficient golf pro, it's really how they're using their legs, ground pressure to turn the pelvis, and it comes flying up through the core. That's really where the power is, just like a punch or a spinning back kick.
What's fascinating is you can bring out inside all your athleticism, all your prior principles into a golf swing. Plus, you've learned the traditional way, the Ben Hogan way, and now you have something to compare and contrast it to. And you can say that the OTT swing is a better swing.
I'm convinced of it. And my swing evolution was dedicated to going down all the rabbit holes. But then Bruce Lee had a saying, the height of cultivation leads to simplicity. I went out like this, but now it's all come back to one shining star, which is the over the top move. It sets up the second half of your swing so that you can continue to pivot around your front leg. And that's where most golfers, they just can't get around that front leg.
What's amazing is this is basically you actually fulfilling your dreams of becoming a Asian action star, because this is like Kung Fu, where you're the grasshopper going out trying to become enlightened about the golf swing.
It really is. And it's a long form documentary. My YouTube channel is a 12-year documentary about my refinement of the golf swing. And, it's really crazy, but, I certainly had to do the reps and do the work. But one of my favorite sayings that I learned from Anne Reinking, the Broadway star, is she always said the joy is in the work. If you can find the joy in the work, then you can make it. Hogan, is like, I love to practice. If you can find the joy in the work, then you can accomplish anything.
In terms of the joy in making YouTube videos, what's your joy and what part of making YouTube videos do you not enjoy?
I enjoy all of it, but I've reached a point where I feel professionally I need to hand the reins of post-production to someone else, because there's a limiting principle to this where I spend probably 70 to 80% of my time at the computer, not on the golf course. And if I had a videographer and editor to work with me, I could probably quadruple the amount of content that I create. And so that's what my partners and I are discussing is we're actually working with different investors to take everything to the next level. Because I want to be making golf TV shows. I've produced over 100 television series too. I don't know if you know about my history behind the camera, but it's extensive. I produced Extreme Makeover Home Edition that won the Emmy Award. I produced a show for Sundance Channel. I directed and produced it, and it won the Peabody Award for Outstanding Nonfiction. I've worked on The Real World, Road Rules, Growing Up Gotti, Counting Cars, The Simple Life, Making the Band. I mean, I could name all of them. It's, dozens and dozens of shows. So I want to be the biggest golf producer in the world. And I have the ability to do it. I just need the resources to get to the next level.
I kind of feel like you're going to take a shot at my title of YouTube's hottest golf channel.
I think that you clearly have the hottest golf channel, and it's most likely you're going to retain that for, all time, in perpetuity as the hottest golf channel.
That's the ultimate praise. Christo, if people want to learn about the OTT swing, you have academies.
Yeah, so I teach. I'm working on some real high-end retreats that I want to do next year. So I teach, I give personal lessons. It's what I would call it. It's not my primary job. It's like my secondary job, because I'm not teaching 40 hours a week on a range, teach maybe like a quarter of that. And I like to have these group experiences where I work with a group of people at one time. And so my goal right now for the next year is to work with an OTT legend. I'll just throw a name out there, like say, for example, like a Ben Crenshaw or a Hal Sutton or something like that, and have a high-end retreat at a beautiful golf resort for multiple days. I'd love for America, my fiance, to teach yoga for the wives if they want to come along, and just have the most platinum experience a golfer could ever have, where I teach them the OTT classic principles. There's a major winner there to share their experience and what they've learned throughout their lifetime. The wives are welcome to come along. If they're not golfers, they can do hiking, meditation, and yoga with my fiance. I'll even be running a yoga class with the golfers. We'll probably warm up each day with some yoga and meditation and teach people these principles. Also diet. I'm a nationally certified personal trainer as well. And like you've seen that, I can get pretty lean when I want to. In fact, after Christmas is over, I'm probably going to go into shred mode, so, I want people, most of my audience is over the age of 50. It's like, for me, it's what I call quality time left, QTL. I want to be 70 years old playing the best golf of my life. And I don't see any reason why I can't continue to improve, but the machine has to work well. I have to be healthy. I have to be, at peace up here. I have to have flexibility, and these things, I've got an hour and a half. I got to get to yoga. So, that's a part of what I do as a regular part of my routine that, woke up this morning, meditated, This is a part of what I do every day, and it's lifestyle. It's not something that you do because it's a hassle or a chore. It's something you do because it rewards you for doing it. And really, once again, the joy is in the work, the joy is in the lifestyle. You're always doing, the right thing, and it just adds up day after day. That's the one thing that I learned from martial arts is you just chip away at it, and 1% a day. And then at the end of a year, it's like, wow, I really got a lot better.
Christo, you know that saying, how does an ant eat an elephant? One bite at a time. The way you're talking right now with the yoga almost sounds like you're going to end up in Thailand at some point. Folks, I told you at the beginning of this episode that this would be the best Big Boy Pants Golf podcast in its history. And I think I kept my promise. Christo Garcia, thank you so much for being on this episode. And I'm sure we're going to have you on again in the future.
I can't wait. This was a real honor. I told you that we're kindred spirits, and I appreciate you allowing me to tell my story and being as curious as you are about how I got to where I am today. I appreciate it.